What if a single voice could pierce through the darkest prisons, loosen the tightest chains, and expose the deepest lies? In the year 1892, in a forgotten European village surrounded by thick forests and silver rivers, lived a boy named Elias. At just 15 years old, Elias was unlike any other child. His voice was not ordinary. It was as if the heavens themselves had placed a star in his throat. The villagers called him Star Voice, for whenever he sang, the air seemed to glow, and even the most burdened hearts felt lighter. Mothers hummed his songs to their babies, tired farmers paused to listen, and the elders whispered that his gift was not of this earth but of the divine. Yet, where there is light, there is always shadow. The magistrate of the village, Victor, a man of iron fists and eyes that never softened, despised Elias. He feared the boy's influence over the people. He feared that a mere child's voice could do what his laws and punishments could not, bring hope. And hope was dangerous, for hopeful people could no longer be controlled. One winter morning, the magistrate's prized stallion, black as midnight and wild as the wind, was found lifeless at the edge of the river. Whispers filled the market square. Whose hand had done this? Before the truth could be sought, Victor's cold voice rang out with accusation. He pointed at Elias. Without proof, without mercy, he claimed that the boy had done the unforgivable. The villagers gasped, some cried, but fear silenced them. Who would dare challenge the magistrate? In a single cruel moment, Elias was torn from his family, his wrists bound with rough ropes, his songs silenced by the heavy steps of guards. He was sentenced to 7 long years in Iron Hollow, a prison whispered about in hushed tones, a place where men went in but never returned whole. Iron Hollow was no mere prison, it was a graveyard for the living. The walls were damp, the air was filled with the stench of despair, and the guards took pleasure in breaking the spirit of those trapped inside. Elias, still a boy, was thrown into the darkness, surrounded by men hardened by crime, betrayal, and endless sorrow. But where others broke, Elias did not. On the 3rd night, when the moon's faint light barely touched the cracks in the stone ceiling, he did something unthinkable. He sang. It was not a loud song, but a trembling note carried on the air. It spoke of home, of mothers waiting, of fathers who once smiled, of fields golden with wheat, and skies without bars. The prisoners lifted their heads from the dirt. Hardened eyes softened. For the first time in years, men who had forgotten their humanity felt tears burning their cheeks. Word spread through the prison like wildfire. The boy with the voice of light had been caged, but not silenced. They began to call him the Lark, for his song reminded them of the bird that sings before dawn. And with every note, Elias fed a flame that even the coldest chains could not smother, hope. Yet, as Elias's songs grew stronger, so did Victor's unease. In the village, his father, worn but unyielding, stumbled upon a hidden truth. A knife smeared with dried blood, buried beneath Victor's own stable. It was the magistrate, not Elias, who had killed the stallion. The boy had been framed, a pawn in a cruel game of fear and control. And so the tale of a boy's voice against iron and lies had only just begun. Because sometimes, it is not swords or kings that change the world, but a song sung in the darkest of places. In the silence of his lonely home, Elias's father, Abram, searched for answers. The night his son was dragged away had left him hollow, yet something within refused to accept the magistrate's story. His boy was many things, gentle, kind, even fragile in some ways, but never cruel. Never capable of killing a beast without cause. One stormy evening, as Abram repaired the broken doors of his stable, he uncovered what the shadows tried to hide. Behind a loose plank, half buried in straw, lay a knife. Its blade was stained with rusted crimson, and its handle bore the crest of the magistrate's household. Abram's breath caught in his chest. The stallion's killer had never been his son. The magistrate himself had planted the lie. But how could a lone man stand against the most powerful figure in the village? Abram's hands trembled, yet his heart hardened. He could not remain silent. for silence was the very weapon Victor wielded to control them all. Meanwhile, within Iron Hollow, Elias's songs grew bolder. The boy who had once been fragile was transforming into something unbreakable. At night, his voice echoed through the damp corridors, weaving into the hearts of prisoners who had long forgotten hope. Hardened men began to share food. Rivals ceased their endless quarrels. The cruel rhythm of despair was interrupted by harmony. The guards grew restless. They beat Elias, forced him into darkness, and starved him, yet still he sang. His songs no longer belonged to him. They belonged to the broken, the forgotten, and the hopeless. Even the oldest prisoners whispered that they had never heard anything so pure within such filth. Back in the village, Abram began to speak quietly to neighbors, showing them the bloodied knife, the truth they had feared to see. At first, they recoiled. No one wished to stand against Victor. But whispers turned to murmurs, and murmurs became voices. Mothers remembered the comfort Elias had brought to their children. Farmers recalled how his songs once carried them through harvest. Slowly, courage spread like fire beneath the ash of fear. The village began to stir with unrest. Men gathered in secret, women prayed with burning eyes, and children asked when Starvoice would return. The magistrate, sensing the ground shifting beneath his feet, tightened his grip with cruelty. Taxes were raised, punishments became harsher, and those who dared speak Elias's name were silenced. But the truth could not be buried forever. Abram, desperate to save his son, managed to smuggle a message into Iron Hollow through a sympathetic guard. The note carried only a few words: "The village knows." Hold on. When Elias read the letter by the dim glow of a smuggled candle, his heart surged. For the first time, he realized he was not forgotten. His father was fighting, and his village was awakening. That night, under the watch of a swollen full moon, Elias raised his voice higher than he ever had before. His song rolled through the prison halls like thunder. It was no longer just a melody, it was a call. The prisoners, beaten and starved, felt something ignite. They rose, they pushed, and they roared with him. The guards struck with whips and clubs, but the tide had turned. Hope had become rebellion. Chains clattered against the stone floors, walls shook with fury, and deep within the bowels of Iron Hollow, a hidden tunnel, long forgotten, was unearthed by desperate hands. Elias, the lark, was carried into the darkness of freedom. But freedom did not mean safety. Word spread quickly, and soon the magistrate himself would hunt the boy who sang light into shadows. The game of truth and lies had reached its breaking point. Elias emerged from the darkness of the hidden tunnels with nothing but his voice and the weight of survival upon his shoulders. The moon lit the forest in silver, and the cries of hounds echoed in the distance. The magistrate had already unleashed his men. The boy who once sang to fields and rivers was now hunted like prey. Exhausted, Elias stumbled toward the edge of the village. He could almost hear his father's voice in his mind, urging him to endure just one step more. But before he could reach safety, the magistrate appeared with armed riders, their torches blazing like fire against the night. Victor's eyes glowed with fury. The villagers gathered in silence, torn between fear and courage. For years, they had bowed their heads, obeyed in silence. But now they faced a choice: to let a boy who carried their hopes be crushed, or to rise at last. Abram stepped forward, holding high the bloodied knife that carried Victor's crest. His voice, though trembling, carried across the square. He told the truth. He spoke of the stallion, of the planted lies, of the cruelty that had condemned his son. One by one, villagers began to murmur, then shout. Their voices grew louder, drowning out Victor's threats. The magistrate raised his whip to strike, but before he could, something remarkable happened. Elias, weak yet unbroken, began to sing. His voice, though roughened by years of suffering, soared into the night. It carried the pain of chains, the strength of survival, and the hope of freedom. The villagers fell silent, tears burning in their eyes. The riders, uneasy, shifted in their saddles. Even the hounds stilled. The song pierced through the walls of fear the magistrate had built for so long. And in that moment, the people rose, not with weapons, but with courage. They stood between Victor and Elias, shielding the boy with their bodies. The magistrate's power crumbled. The truth was no longer hidden. His guards, shaken by the villagers' defiance, lowered their weapons. Alone and exposed, Victor fled into the darkness, never to return. Elias collapsed into his father's arms, free at last. His songs, though forever marked with sorrow, became hymns of resilience. No longer the innocent melodies of a boy, but the powerful echoes of one who had endured the deepest shadows. Years later, his voice became legend. The villagers told their children of the Lark, the boy who sang in the darkness until chains broke and lies were shattered. They said his songs were not just for their village, but for all who believed hope could survive even in the blackest of nights. And so, Elias's gift lived on, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a song of triumph. For sometimes, the smallest voice carries the greatest power. Lessons from this tale are clear. Hope cannot be silenced, even in chains. Truth always rises, no matter how deeply it is buried. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to stand, even when your voice trembles. If this story touched your heart, let your voice be heard too. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel, so the song of hope may continue to reach others.